Our scripture this morning comes from Exodus 3, verses 1 through 6. We continue our one-word sermon series on Exodus, studying the life of Moses, and we find our way to the third chapter. 3 weeks in, and we're only to the third chapter, but that's because this story is so rich. There are so many great details to it, and so it is fun going through and spending just a little more time focusing on the life of Moses, and today reminding ourselves that even a great prophet can be very much like us. Let us turn our attention to the reading. If you'd like to follow along, it's printed. If you'd like to just listen along, that is fine too. Let us hear the word. Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law, Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. Then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight, and see why the bush has not burned up." When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, "Moses, Moses." And he said, "Here am I." Then he said, "Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place upon which you stand is holy." Not as easy to turn pages with mine. He said further, "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. May God add blessing and understanding to the hearing of these words this day. So we come to that thought of excuses. We come to that thought of, have you ever had a friend call you and ask you to do something that you didn't want to do? I shared in the newsletter this week about that commercial where the guy's moving and he calls his friends and they're like, "Oh, I can't come," or "I have to do this," or just won't even answer their phone. Well, I ask you, a friend calls, you don't want to do something. It may be going out. It may be helping them move. It may be whatever a friend might call you to do. And what excuses have you made? Are you too busy? Do the kids have a game? Is it date night? I already have other plans when nothing's on the schedule. I've been there. You've been there. You know it. It's just one of those things. It doesn't have to be that way with us. We could openly and honestly communicate with each other, but we just don't want to hurt anybody else's feelings. "Oh, that sounds like a great idea, but not so much for me." But you go and have a good time. So we make the excuse. Find our way out of it. And even with God, we talked about it with the children, even with God, we will find a way that when God says, "Hey, I've got something for you," or "I'd like you to do," or "Hey, come join me with," sometimes it's just too uncomfortable. Sometimes it's just not who we think we are. Sometimes we don't think we're talented or gifted enough to make it happen. And yet, God will call us. And God will see us through. And God will continue to lead us even when we say no. Just like Moses. Now, when we left the story last week, Moses had been rejected by his own people. Now, which were his people? Were they the people of the palace, or were they the slaves living in the slums? He was rejected by both. So he left under the threat of being killed by the king for him having killed an Egyptian soldier. He made his way across the desolate deserts, ended up in Midian, helped some girls at the well, found favor with Ruel, today called Jethro, and marries Zipporah. We catch up to the story today, and everything seems to be going well. He has become a shepherd. He's thrown off the royalty. He's put Egypt behind him, and now he's a simple shepherd. He's living his life. He's a family man. One day, he's out with the sheep. Carefree. No longer has to think about, you know what, I'm living in a palace, but I should be a slave, or I should be dead. He's not having to deal with that stress in his life. So he's out with the sheep, and he sees something peculiar. Famous story. You know this story. He sees the burning bush, and he's like, well, that's amazing. I think I should go take a look. So leaving the sheep, maybe he wasn't a very good shepherd. Leaving the sheep, he goes up to take a look. And as he approaches, he hears a voice. Now, it would be amazing enough to see a bush burning, but not burning up, not being consumed. But to get that close and hear a voice come out of that, I don't know if I'd have stuck around. I don't know about you, but I would have been like, I must have eaten some bad food. I need to go home. I need to go home. But he stayed. And God says, I've got some work for you. Take off your sandals and stay a while. This is holy ground, and this is going to be a holy conversation, and I've got something that I need to say to you. God says, I've seen the plight of my people. The Hebrews are my people. I am the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, your forefathers. You know this history. I'm the one. I'm the one who made promises to them. I'm the one who's come back now that I see what's happening. And this has been happening for some time. Maybe God could have hurried up a little bit. But God has come and said to Moses, I see what's going on. I need you to go to Pharaoh. You know, that guy who wants to kill you. Go to him and ask for my people to be let go. Take them out of slavery. And this is where Moses becomes very, very, very much like us. 5 excuses. The first excuse is this. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? This is the very first excuse of Moses. Who am I that I should go? This is the worst excuse ever. Because literally, where was Moses raised? In the palace. He's better educated. He's better trained. He knows the way of the people that he's going to have conversation with. Who else could it be? It had to be Moses, don't you think? It had to be Moses. Surely God is going, well, Moses, do you not remember all these things about yourself? But God doesn't say that. God doesn't point those things out. God just says, I will be with you. God just says, I will be with you. Well, excuse number 2 is this. Moses is like, well, you know what, God? You've been absent for quite a while. These people don't even know you. So I need a name. If I'm going to be the one to go, I'm going to need to know your name. So could you give me your name and then... But that's okay. You don't need to give it to me. If you don't have a name, that's fine. I'll just stay here. I'm embellishing just a little bit. And God says, my name is I am who I am. Tell the people I am has sent me. If you read the fine print of your Bible, it's a little unclear, this name of God. It could also be, I will be who I will be. Either way, whether it's a present or a future tense, God is who God is. And God says, this is my name. Go and tell the people. Moses, not to be outdone with all the answers that God keeps providing for his excuses, says, well, you know what, God? What if I go and I tell them who you are and they still don't believe? What am I going to do then? God says, all right, I'll give you some signs. See that staff that's in your hand? Throw it on the ground. You know what happens? You've seen the 10 Commandments. Maybe some of you have seen the 10 Commandments. He throws it on the ground, and the staff becomes a snake. And it slithers around, and all he does is pick it up by the tail, and it becomes a staff again. Well, that would be pretty amazing. Then, God says, and if that's not enough for you, here, do this. Take your hand and stick it inside your cloak. And so he does. And he pulls it out, and it is white as snow, like leprous. He puts it back in, and his hand just becomes a hand again. And God says, well, sign number 1 doesn't do it. And if sign number 2 doesn't do it, here's still a third sign. Go to Egypt, go to the Nile River, dip out some water, and pour it on the ground, and it will become blood. That should do it. That should be all you need, Moses. These are enough signs. You ask who you are, well, you're the one. I'll be with you. You ask for my name, I am. You need some signs? Here you go. Let's get busy about this. Let's get going. Well, God, you know what? One more thing. I've never been eloquent. I'm slow of speech and tongue, which meant he stutters. That's what that means. He's telling God, I can't speak for you because I can't speak for anyone. I can't even speak for myself. And God says, Moses, who gives speech to mortals? Who provides that voice? It's me. I'm going to give you the words you need. I'm going to give you the voice that you need to go and deliver my people out of slavery. No more excuses. And finally, like a little kid, Moses just says, send someone else. Just send someone else. I don't want to do it. And finally, the patient God becomes the angry God and says, Moses, you're going to go. You're the one that I want to do this. I'm not going to accept any of your excuses. Get your feet moving towards Egypt. And by the way, you have a brother named Aaron. If you need him, he can assist you, but you're going. You're the one. And so finally, after making excuse after excuse, he will go. That's what we'll pick up next week. Speaking of people making excuses, any professional football fans in the room? A lot's been going on in the NFL this week, these last couple of weeks. Some craziness has been going on, and excuses have been flying around and around. For those of you who don't know, and I'm not going to use any names because I don't think the name should be honored, but a player for the Baltimore Ravens was suspended for 2 games. A few months ago, he hit his then girlfriend and now then fiance and now wife. But he hit her, and he hit her so hard that he knocked her out. He went through the court system, and they sent him to anger management classes. The people who tried him, the people who decided what his fate would be legally, you know what? They had access to video that no one else had seen until about a week and a half or so ago, when a news magazine called TMZ released that footage. They released it, and everybody got to see just how violent that act really was. And once you see that, you don't get it back. It's one thing to hear it, but once you see it, you don't get it back. And public outrage was overwhelming. The Ravens offered to buy back the jerseys of this player and give you new jerseys for those of you who had them, so that you wouldn't have to wear that jersey to their football games anymore. Wasn't that gracious and kind of them? Because a new report came out just last week, and we found out so many more things. The NFL, Roger Goodell, who is the commissioner for the NFL, said, we had never seen that video before. Well, this new report said, it was sent to your offices. A new report said that there was communication between the Baltimore Ravens and the NFL that said, you know what? Slap on the hand. Just a 2-game suspension, and that's what he got. This new report even says the Ravens really like this guy because they sent him a communication, an electronic communication that said, hey, we hope that all of this blows over. We hope all of this goes away really soon. And no matter what happens for you professionally, you need to know this, that when your football days are done, you will have a job in our organization helping young players transition to being a football player in the NFL for the Baltimore Ravens. Isn't that great? He was flabbergasted. So he kept the communication. Earlier in the week, they were all saying, oh, well, you've lied to us. you didn't share with us exactly what happened. But he actually had shared with them exactly what had happened. He had said, I hit her so hard that I knocked her out. And they just slapped him on the wrist. And then, when the rest of the world got to know what happened, they had to have harsher penalties. They had to suspend him. They had to kick him off their team. They had to do something more when everybody found out. And it would be enough for the NFL if that was the only issue that they had. But they had another player who played for another team who had been convicted by the court system of beating his girlfriend severely and threatening to kill her. But he was appealing. And so, since he was on appeal, they allowed this guy to remain an active player, to practice with the team, and to continue to play in games. He's been suspended too now. But it took a lot. What I want to say to you today is that this issue isn't just held to the NFL. We have a problem. We have a problem in our world. Societally, historically, we've been okay with keeping women pinned down. We've been okay with saying women are weaker than men. We've been okay with paying women less for the same amount of work. Come on. Come on. Every person in this room, no matter your gender, no matter your age, is equal in the eyes of God. Equal. Equal. The same. Loved the same. Considered the same. Called to be faithful the same. We have holy books in our world that say it's okay for women to be treated poorly. In the Muslim world, women, let me rephrase, in some parts of the Muslim world, women aren't allowed to be educated. They can be killed for being raped. Within our own holy texts, I dare you to find more than 3 women who were honored. We have texts that say that women should sit down and shut up in church. We have a few stories of women who are heroic. And in fact, women are considered less than farm animals in much of our story. We have to overcome these things. We can't allow these traditions to continue. We can't allow old culture to continue to be part of our present culture when that culture is wrong. In the biggest part of the Christian world, in the Catholic Church, women cannot aspire to the highest levels of leadership. It's not just an NFL problem. And we have historically allowed for excuses. It is time to say no more as the Christian people, as the people of God, who are all considered equal. It just can't be anymore. I'd like to introduce you to a man that I don't think ever made an excuse in his life. I'm sure he did. But not around me. This man, his name is Leo Ball. He lived, when he was still living, in Danville, Indiana, and attended Danville Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, where he was a saint and an elder, and in many ways, the life of that church. I met him in the most precarious way. I had just been hired as a youth minister during my, in between my second and third year of seminary when I was in Indianapolis at Christian Theological Seminary. And the church during the course of the summer, was doing a new pictorial directory, just like we were doing when I was hired here. And so they said, hey, we'd like to include you. Would you please come out and have your picture taken? And I said, sure, I'll be glad to. It's about a 30 or 40 minute drive. I was getting things together, taking my shower, wanted to look good. It was about a 95-degree day. And my car had no air conditioning, by the way. At that time, it got fixed. And so I was about ready to go, and I noticed that one of my roommates had left the front door open. And one of our neighbors had accidentally broken out one of the panes of glass on the very bottom row of panes, and my cat had escaped, one of my cats. So after having gotten ready, in 95-degree weather, I'm out searching for the cat. That takes a long time, because when cats don't want to be found, they don't get found. So I'm searching, looking in all the usual spots, not finding her. Finally found her. Got her in the house, grabbed my suit, threw it in the car, and just took off. As I'm driving, I noticed this little light on my dashboard. It's red. I'm driving down streets in Indianapolis, passing gas station after gas station after gas station, going, oh, I can make it, I can make it, I can make it. I get to the last gas station before Danville, Indiana. I look at my gauge. I'm running entirely too late for a place that I haven't even started working at yet. And I'm like, I can make it. I only need to drive about 3 or 4 more miles. I can make it. About 300 yards past the turn for the gas station, the car started to sputter a little bit. Started going much slower than it had been going. And I started saying some very good things to myself. So I pulled over on the side of the road. Can't believe that I've run out of gas. By the way, first and only time that's ever happened. I get out of the car and I start to walk up the hill towards the gas station, and a car pulls in behind me. I mean, almost like that. Big car. An older guy gets out, looks at me and says, out of gas? Yes, I am. Jump in. You need to know that back in seminary, I didn't look like this. I wore a lot of tie-dye. I had an earring. And I had long hair in back. Short hair in the front. They affectionately call that the mullet. I might have been the poster boy. And this man, who's generations removed from me, sees a guy looking like that on the side of the road, has every reason to say, I don't think so. Has every reason just to keep going down the road. But he pulls over and he says, get in. On the way to the gas station, we had to go forward to turn around to come back. He starts chatting me up and he says, so, what are you doing? I was like, well, I am headed out to a church in Danville. And he said, oh, really? We live in Danville. In fact, we just came from our church. We just got all dressed up and had our pictures taken for Sunday. And since we were all dressed up, we thought we'd go out to dinner. You just had your pictures taken for a directory, huh? I was sinking in the back seat. I was like, well, that's funny, because that's what I'm coming out here for at Danville Christian Church. He said, well, that's our church. And I said, hi, I'm your new youth minister. I'm sure that Leo wasn't perfect, but he's a man who tried to live a no excuses life. And when presented with an opportunity to be faithful, he just was. Like many of you, by the way. But many of us are too much like Moses. When God says, I've got something for you to do, and it could be as simple as helping someone get gas in their car. It could be something as big as liberating a people. We start to feel inadequate. We start to find ways to say no before we can even consider the ways that we might find a way to say yes. But God will not relent, and God will not let up, and God will say, you are uniquely qualified for this event in this time. Go and be my servant. Even with all of our excuses, even with all of our shortcomings, we are called to be great people, faithful to our God. May it be truer of us more often. May there be fewer excuses. Let's just find our way.